Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons online. All systems nominal.
Hello everyone, Carrie here, coming to you from Apollo, and I want to talk about the Sommerset Strikers Force Pack. Now, before I get into it, the first thing I want to say is you will likely hear a dog barking in the background constantly. That is because the dog next door is, well, he's an idiot, and he likes to go outside and bark at random things in the middle of the night. And of course, recording this at 10:45 at night, I get to deal with the dog barking. So I apologize for that, but we are going to work around that as best we can. So the Sommerset Strikers Force Pack. This is something that came out as part of the Kickstarter, and originally it was planned as a stretch goal for, I believe, $8 million was the goal to get this. Unfortunately, we didn't reach that goal, but it was decided that this could be an add-on, and I'm very happy that they did decide to do that. So, before we even get into the Force Pack, I want to talk about the Sommerset Strikers and where this whole thing comes from. So, in 1994, a cartoon was put out, and this was not the best quality cartoon, I'm not going to lie. It essentially covered the story of Adam Steiner, who was at the time training on Tharkad, and he put together a ragtag group to go and reclaim his homeworld of Sommerset, which had been conquered by Clan Jade Falcon. The cartoon is semi-canon, and when I say this, what I mean is that so it's canon, but it's not canon, if that makes sense. Because the cartoon is in universe. It has been retconned in universe to be a part of the BattleTech universe. It is a children's show that is based loosely on the events and the adventures of Adam Steiner and the first Sommerset Strikers. Now, of course, only to add to this confusion, FASA put out a scenario pack, and that scenario pack covered the events of the Strikers, which sort of muddied the water even more. But thankfully, Catalyst Game Labs eventually decided, you know what? The cartoon was a children's show in universe, and it's loosely based on what actually happened. And the source book is sort of considered just to be like a guide to that cartoon, which is interesting because it does have scenarios in it and everything else. And yeah, so it's in a weird spot. But what happened was over the years, the cartoon has gained a cult following. And of course, since then, we have had I don't know how to put it. We've had the Renaissance in BattleTech, which means more people have discovered the cartoon, which means more people have essentially been painting up their own Sommerset Strikers units. And quite frankly, with all the themed force packs that have been coming out for mercenaries and stuff like that, this was an opportunity that couldn't be passed up. So you end up with the Sommerset Strikers Force Pack, which I'm going to say right now, probably none of these will ever be painted by me in Sommerset Striker colors. Instead, they'll probably end up being painted in, I don't know, something else. But that's essentially where this comes from. And I know Sarna disagrees about the canonicity of the source book, claiming it is fully canon. I don't think it actually is, because the scenarios in there are sometimes completely unwinnable. And we'll talk about the source book a little bit more near the end of this, but I want to talk about the force pack, the miniatures that come with it, and just what you get. So you get 5 miniatures: a Wolfhound, a Bushwacker, Hatamoto-Chi, a Mauler, and an Axman. Now, what's interesting is that none of these miniatures, which are of the Wolfhound, Bushwacker, or Axman, which all have miniatures currently. Those are all reposes. And of course, the Hatamoto-Chi and the Mauler are brand new sculpts. So, quite frankly, I think it's pretty awesome that this isn't something where you get one repose or two reposes. No, this is two brand new sculpts and three reposes, and all of them are spectacular. The only thing that I think would have made this even better is if it came with the Banshee Aerospace Fighter as well, which was something that was cooked up for the show, which is a weird hybrid aerospace conventional VTOL VSTL fighter. Yeah, it's this was an interesting show, some interesting concepts. Like there was a the Vulture had an escalator out the butt to get to the cockpit. Yeah. So anyway, getting past all of that, let's look at these miniatures. The first of these I want to talk about is the Wolfhound, and this one is done in a kneeling pose with the gun arm forward. It's quite frankly, it's very, very well done. I really like how they did this. I do. Okay, so overall, my thoughts on the miniature before I get into the any of the nitpicking is it looks wonderful. I like the pose, and I think they did a really good job on this. Now, as for my nitpicks, the first of these, I'm not even getting the mold lines yet, but it's not that big of a thing on these, as you'll see, for the most part. There's a couple things that come up, but the pose of the miniature is in a kneeling pose, which looks really cool. But it also makes the Wolfhound shorter than, I was going to say the same height as, but I just stood one next to it. It makes it shorter than the Centurion. In fact, it makes it about, yeah, it makes it about the same height as an urban mech. So while it's not something where you're modeling for advantage or anything, in Alpha Strike, I could see some people feeling a bit sketchy about having this facing off against them on the table, as it makes the Wolfhound just that much more easy to hide behind cover and easier to get partial cover bonuses if you're behind low buildings. Now, as far as the miniature itself, the legs, looking at it from the front, you have a little bit of a mold line on the, well, actually, that's a, not a little bit, that's, it's hidden in a corner, but it's a very sharp corner because of the mold line on the mech's right leg, and it's on the inside of the leg. There's also a second mold line towards the outside, which isn't nearly as um, obvious. And yeah, I mean, it's not going to be hard to clean them up. You can actually see the clip point on the front of the leg. It's not hard to clean up, but it's very obvious that it's there from how sharp that corner is. On the right leg, it's all along the outside. The clip point is on the top, facing into the armpit, which is actually the front of the upper thigh. And they've hidden the mold line along a corner. It's easy enough to find, but a quick scrape with a hobby knife and that one's cleaned up. Otherwise, I'm looking. So you got one on the back of the mech's left arm. And yeah, I mean, other than that, you have the normal burring around the end of the muzzle on the right arm main weapon. One thing I will say is that the shoulder pad, which normally hangs over, it's not, um, I don't know how else to put this. So you have like a shoulder pad on the right arm where it has a panel that hangs down and it's supposed to be hanging away from the shoulder, is actually molded so that it fills in that gap. And I understand that was probably done as something to ease the production process and make it easier to produce. but also if you know that you are not supposed to see it, you just see it. It's right there. It's like, hi, how you doing? I'm just this big old chunk behind that panel that you're not supposed to see. Because it's supposed to be open space back there, and it's obviously not open. So overall, this is a really good miniature. I really do like it. I just Oh, and also it's accurate to the miniature or the mech, the WLF-2 Wolfhound card that you get for Zero. But it's not the most amazing of mechs. Now, quite frankly, the well, actually, I'll get into that before we go and talk about the scenario pack a little bit. And I'm not going to go too into depth on it, but I want to talk a little bit about that. So let's look at Ciro Ramirez's Wolfhound. It is 28 points. It's a WLF-2. It's a battle mech, size 1, TMM2, movement of 12, striker. Ciro has a skill of 4, so this is still at the normal point cost. Has a short and medium of 3, a long of 1, no overheat value, 4 armor, 3 structure, energy, and rear 1-1 nil. Overall, for the period, this is actually a really good light mech. So you have two different kind. Well, you have three different kinds of light mechs. Really, you have like a fast striker, something that moves insanely fast, doesn't do a lot of damage, but you can get behind enemies and poke them in the back a little bit and worry them. Then you have the full-on scouts, which are they're slower than those little backbiters, but they're not as um, they're about the same well armed. You get like 1 or 2 damage. And then this is hitting at for the era, for an Intersphere mech, it's hitting at about the same as a medium mech, like you would expect to see from a Griffin or a Wolverine. In fact, it hits as hard as the Starleague era Wolverine and the Wolverine 2. So that is actually a really decent mech for its era, for its size and cost. And it's a sub 30 point mech that's doing 3 at short and medium and has 7 total life with ENE. So it's really good for a light mech from that era. The next one we're going to look at is the Bushwacker. This was driven by Valten Rider in the series. And I know I didn't really touch on Zero that much. Zero sort of like, I don't know how to put it. He got captured by Clan Jade Falcon, and then he was like all on board with the Falcon stuff. So we're not really going to talk about Zero that much. He's sort of Zero is an ass, like the whole time. But getting to Vulcan Rider. Vulcan Rider's Bushwacker is what we're looking at next. Now, this one has it's a repose, obviously. It has a piece of a vulture underneath of its right foot, which is really cool. I like how they did this. And it is armed to look just like how the X1 should. Looking at the mech, the miniature overall, it's a good quality miniature. There are a couple things I want to talk about here. First about mold blinds, clip points, etc. The clip points you can see from the front on the tops of the legs. They're not really hard to get to with a hobby knife, it looks like. And I'm not seeing any really obvious mold lines in there. If we look to the sides and the back of the mech, and I'm feeling everything too, just to see if I can feel a mold line somewhere. Um, it's so far, okay, so there's a clip point on the left side of the torso along the lower part, which should be easy to clean up. Everything looks good here. The back of it looks good. The right side, I think you can see a clip point on the top of the wrecked cockpit of the Vulture. Shouldn't be hard to get to at all. And then we're back to the front. Now, one thing I want to mention here on the front of this miniature, the missile launcher. And I've heard some stories that a few people have seen this. but the LRM launcher up on the side of the torso, the detail on the front is not as clean as I would like. And I'm not sure what's going on there because the actual launcher looks to be okay, but the detail there is a little bit, it's a little messed up. And I'm not super happy about it, but it's not so bad that you're like, okay, I need to send this back, or message Catalyst and be like, hey, y'all got to replace this. But at the same time, this is like a big thing with the Kickstarter was, the Sommerset Strikers Force Pack when they announced it. And I'm really not happy with how that missile launcher came out. Now, as far as mold lines, like I said, you're really not seeing any on the back of the torso. They hid the mold line for the body by running it along the top corner, giving you a very sharp corner. It's nothing bad or anything. And of course, also the ends of the weapon barrels have their normal burring, and that is on the arm and on the torso. So overall, really well detailed mech. I like the miniature. It's a little bit different looking than the standard Bushwacker miniature. I do like that. I think this looks a little bit better. And, I'm really happy about it. It feels almost like they sort of incorporated the feel of the toys from the cartoon, which, yes, there were BattleTech cartoon toys. I feel like they incorporated that. I don't know how to put it. You'd have to see one of the toys to understand what I'm saying. And I'll probably see if I can find a picture of it to pop up here on the screen. But yeah, overall, great miniature. I really like it. And it's pretty high quality. The only problem I really have is that missile launcher with the details not quite as sharp as I would like. Of course, looking at Velton Rider's Bushwacker, it's a BSW-X1. Velton is a skill 3, so I conveniently have pulled up from the master unit list the Bushwacker, which gives me the actual point costs. So the BSW-X1 Bushwacker is a 33 point mech. It's 40 if you're using Velton. That's skill 3. It is a battle mech, size 2, TMM of 2, movement of 10. It's a skirmisher. Has a short and medium of 3 with a long of 2. No overheat. Armor of 5, structure of 3 with AC 110, case and indirect fire 1. Now, I mentioned on the last mech, the Wolfhound, how good the Wolfhound is as a light mech, and this kind of shows it right here because with the Wolfhound, you have one less armor and you have one less damage at long range. And you're also more survivable because of ENE instead of case. So, yeah, that says it all right there to me as far as how good that Wolfhound is. And of course, the artwork on the card matches what they had on the show as far as the coloring on that Bushwacker. It's really sweet. I do like it. I mean, you'll be seeing the master unit list version, but it's a really good miniature, and quite frankly, that Wolfhound is a bargain compared to the heavier Bushwacker. So next up, we have the Hatamoto-Chi. Now, this is one of the 2 new sculpts, like brand new miniatures for the Force Pack. Not counting repositioned miniatures as new sculpts. Obviously, they're reposes, even though they're very well done. So the Hatamoto-Chi is, well, okay, so it is a thug, but a House Kurita thug. Like, if you're familiar with the Star League mechs, the thug was supposed to be a replacement for the Warhammer. And oddly enough, because the Draconis Combine had an excess of chargers, they could repurpose the production line and turn them into something very much like the Starly Gara Thug, which is the Hatamoto-Chi, which comes with 2 PPCs, 2 SRM6s, and a lot of 90s Japanese imaging. Yeah, I know it's technically older than 90s, but the look they were going for was like that samurai armor. So it's very much Japan, like comic book Japan-esque. I don't know how else to put it. Like it's very much like an American concept of feudal Japan. And if you turn that into a battle mech. So this is what you get. And not gonna lie, beautiful miniature. Giving it a quick once around, I like how they've done everything on it. And it actually, I have a charger right near me. And if I look at the charger compared to this, they are, yeah, no, they're exactly the same height, and you can totally tell from the design cues in the Hatamoto-Chi that it is a charger. Well, it's a better charger, unless you're talking about the Charger C, but that's different. Anyway, getting onto the miniature, everything on here is sculpted amazingly well. It has a lot of detail, like tons of detail. Um, as far as flat locations to do stuff, the shoulder pads are immense, and you have more than enough room to do any. Like if you want to do things on flat surfaces for decals, or if you're one of those people who can actually pull off doing freehand, this thing right here is for you, and you will have a fun time with it. I have been looking the entire time I've been talking for mold lines, and this is one of the few where I'm having trouble finding any. Um, Usually Catalyst has some telltale mold lines that come through on every miniature, and that's usually on the legs, the clip points on the top of them, stuff like that. This one though, they've done an epic job. Like I can't tell you, it makes up for the Bushwacker, to be honest. And quite frankly, if I were a Kurita player, this would top tier. This would be like one of the first things that I would be looking to get. And I'm very happy with it. The only clip point that I'm even able to find on this miniature is on the bottom of the pelvis. There's one there, but I'm not seeing the normal upper leg ones. I'm not seeing the mold lines running down the backs of the legs. This is just stellar when compared to some of the other stuff that has come out in the past. Now, that Hatamoto-Chi is piloted in the cartoon by Franklin Sakamoto. It's a HTM-27T Hatamoto-Chi, and Franklin is a skill 2, so he's heavily going to skew the point cost on this mech. So that's why, looking at the master unit list, we have the actual point cost. The Hatamoto-Chi 27T is 39 points. If Franklin's piloting it, it goes up to 55. It is a battle mech, size 4, TMM of 1, movement of 8. It's a brawler. Well, for him it's skill 2. For everybody else it's skill whatever you choose. But yeah, 55 points, it's a skill 2. Once again, we are looking at lower damage numbers, but that's because it is what it is. It's 3050 Zener Sphere technology, short and medium of 3, long of 2, overheat of 1. It does have armor of 8 and structure of 6, so this is something that will take a long time to chew through. And it has case and SRM 1-1, which in competitive play doesn't really matter, but in casual play, if you have the SRM ability, Infernos can be fun, but also the tandem charge warheads are really epic. And really quick side note, tandem charge warheads, what they do is whenever you hit and you have tandem charge warheads on board, if you have the SRM ability, you roll to see if you cause a critical hit. You don't just roll on the table like normal. You roll, I want to say you have to roll an 8 or up, and then you get to roll on the critical hit chart, which I'm going off memory here, but quite frankly, that is ridiculously powerful. Yes, Inferno rounds, you have medium heat of 1, but you're losing 1 damage. With tandem charges, you don't lose that damage, and suddenly you are possibly rolling a crit every turn, regardless of what you roll on the to hit number. Well, you have to hit, but regardless of whether or not roll a 12. Also, before I go on to the next mech, I want to say it does come with 2 different kinds of back banners, one of them being the more traditional Japanese samurai banner with a cloth banner part, or there's a metal fin part type banner that you can put there as well, and it has a little spot on the back for it. Next up, we have the Mauler. Now, the Mauler, I need to do a video about this thing because uh, shrapnel. It was brought to my attention recently that there is a shrapnel article that totally retcons the Mauler, and yeah, it's not the most pleasant of retcons. I'm just gonna leave it at that. But this miniature is big, and like when I say big, I mean big. It is so it's about the same height as the Hatamoto-Chi, but it's much bulkier towards the top because of those massive missile launchers. Now, the look of it is very much inspired by the look of it in the cartoon. I'm just going to say that right now. And I really like what they've done here. The gun arms, which I believe were AC2s, are tremendously huge, but that's always been a weird thing about the Mauler. And yeah, this thing it's imposing for, I mean, being a Mauler, because Maulers, right? But this is a really imposing miniature. No, hold up, was it large lasers in the arms? And either way, all the gun barrels on this are really, really big. So first of all, my normal gripe nitpick is usually about the ends of the gun barrels, where the muzzle is. There's a little bit of that burring. It's not as much as normal. I think they did a good job there. Looking at the mech from the front, I don't see any obvious mold lines, but if you run your finger along the top of the knee pads, you can feel where they are there. Um, but they're not like sticking out tremendously at you. Also, as you go around the miniature, you'll notice from the side, from the mech's left side, you can see the mold line, or not mold line, the clip point on the back of the arm. And then once you get to the back, you have like a plethora of clip points. You can see both arm clip points, which are on the upper arm on the rear towards the outside. And then you can see the leg clip points, which are on the tops of the upper legs near the hips. And yeah, actually, that's all you can see. The missile launchers on the rear do have mold lines. You can feel them on the edge, but they're not like sticking out at you. Also, there is a mold line along the back of the right leg, which, if I turn it correctly, I can see it, but well, no, I can sort of see it dead on too. And that runs down at least midway through the leg before it disappears. So, oh, and of course from the mech's right, once again, you're seeing the hip and the back of the arm mold line. Overall, like if I feel the like around the arms, I can feel the mold lines, but they don't stick out to me visually. looking at it from underneath, it's the same thing. For the most part, they've done an amazing job with this miniature. The clip points are all in positions where you can easily get to them and clean them up. They're not really that bad. And that one mold line, it does stick out a lot right towards the top of the leg. It's really easy to clean up. I think they did a wonderful job on this once again. My biggest gripe is the cockpit. So this cockpit is a 6-window cockpit, which that's fine, whatever. But two of those windows are facing downward towards the missile launchers and are going to be a pain in the ass to get to, and the rest of them look like they're pretty easy. On the big positives, once again, the shoulder pads on this are massive. You have tons of room to work with here if you are either doing decals or freehand. And what's interesting is you can't really see it visually, but if you feel, the center part of those shoulder pads are slightly recessed as compared to the border of them. So that is really well done, and I do like it. Now, the Mauler was piloted by Zachary Hawk Hawkins, who was a sergeant or staff sergeant or something like that in the Federated Commonwealth. He has a Mauler MAL-1R, and of course, Zach is a skill 3. So once again, we're going to the master unit list, which shows us the skill 4 point cost. Because at skill 3, Hawk's mech costs 44 points. In Alpha Strike at skill 4, which is where you point everything for standard, it's 1.0 modifier for skill 4, it's 37 points. So the Mauler 1R is a battle mech, size 4, TMM1, movement of 6. It's a sniper, and for short, it has a damage value of 2. That's because of those AC2s. Then you have a medium and a long of 3. So far, it's the one that hits hardest out at long range of the strikers. It has armor of 7, structure of 4, with specials of Case, Indirect Fire 1, LRM 111, and Overheat Long. So that 2 overheat can be applied out at long range, which isn't a bad thing, especially if you just have the Mauler stand still and snipe at your opponent the entire time, which is more than valid of a tactic as you essentially reduce the skill by 1. So if you're piloting a skill 4 Mauler and you stand still, you are now as skilled as Hawkins. Zachary Hawkins. Zach. I don't know why I didn't call him Zach. I call him Hawk. I guess it sounded more 90s awesome to call him Hawk than to call him Zach. So that leaves one mech left in this force pack. And that one mech is Adam Steiner's AXM-2N Axman, the weirdest Axman at this point. I want to say there are some weirder ones. Actually, I know there are weirder ones. There is one that doesn't have an axe. It has a handheld weapon. But this is Adam Steiner's Axman. And I think they went with this variant simply because you could make it more toy friendly with the shoulder missile launchers and stuff like that for the show. And then, of course, we kind of get stuck with this legacy as a game because who doesn't want an Axman that has 2 LRM racks? And yeah, I never understood it. That, and also the 3 medium lasers in the one arm with the axe also felt like a waste. I mean, I'm never a big fan of weapons in the arm with a physical attack weapon because, well, yeah, you know, you can't use the weapon if you're short range. Like if you had an LRM launcher, okay, I'm getting off track. Anyway, let's talk about this miniature. So first of all, it's been reposed, and it's a different variant than the one you can get standard. It is partially standing on a down hunchback to C, which I think they've done a wonderful job of doing here. It overhangs the base a little bit. It looks really good. I like what they've done. Looking at the mech from the front, like everything looks good. And even as you get to the sides and the rear, like everything on this miniature looks really good. There is a clip point on the debris towards the front left hex side. But for the most part, the Axman miniature looks really good. I see a couple clip points, one on the lower rear of well, I should say upper rear. I don't know. The shoulder. It's on the shoulder of the right arm. The medium laser detail on that arm is not as clean as I would like. And looking at, like, I can feel the mold lines. They've hidden into corners and stuff, but I don't see them. So they've done a really good job of hiding the mold lines on this miniature. I really like it. My gripe is that this is an AXM-2N. This is not a mech that should exist. I'm just, I don't know. Maybe it's like, I don't know. I don't get it. Like, I've never liked the AXM-2N. This is probably going to end up in a Fedcom force or a FedSun's force. Um, these are not getting painted up like the Sommerset Strikers. They are going to get painted up as probably two of them are Kurita, two of them are Fedcom. One of them might get used as a mercenary. But this Axman is, yeah, beautiful miniature. I love the miniature. I just don't like the variant. So it is super well done, but it's just, oh, those missile launchers. Oh, that's actually not a bad idea. Two SRM launchers on the shoulders. That would be the way to go. I mean, actually, there might be a variant that's like that already. I have to look. But what we get officially is a 2N Axman. Now, Adam Steiner is a skill 2, so he obviously skews the point cost on this miniature, or this mech. So the 2N at a skill 2 is 47 points. This is normally 33. It's a battle mech, size 3, TMM1, movement of 8, jump. It's a skirmisher. Short and medium of 3, long of 2 with 1 overheat, armor of 6, structure of 3 with case, IF1, LRM 111, and melee. So it hits like a heavy mech essentially. And I think you hit further than just base to base. I think you have like a 1-inch reach essentially. Like if any of you ever played War Machine, you have the reach ability. I think I don't use melee often enough in Alpha Strike, so I have to double check. But I want to say it gives you like a 1-inch reach around the miniature where you can actually hit stuff without being in base contact, which is quite convenient. So yeah, I mean overall, all the miniatures in this are awesome. The Bushwacker is the one that I worry about the most with that weird detail issue on the front of the missile launcher. And of course, the Wolfhound. I'm sure somebody's going to scream bloody murder at a tournament when somebody brings that out and uses it to get partial cover behind things you normally can't get partial cover behind. And the reason I say that is because most tournament groups, most tournament formats with the jumping mechs are like line of sight is drawn from the physical miniature. So if you have a jumping mech, you have to cover up 2/3 or yeah, I want to say it's 2/3 or no, half. But you have to cover up enough of that mech to get partial cover, but you also get line of sight from there, which means that Wolfhound is going to have a very distinct advantage when it comes to like low level buildings where it can hide a good chunk of itself behind them. So as far as the force pack goes, my opinion on it, it is really good. I like it. I don't know if like I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of the pose of like the Wolfhound, but other than that, if you're looking for something, if you're not a Sommerset Strikers fan and you are just looking for some mechs that would work good for a Fedcom or for a Laren and a Draconis Combine Force, This gives you 2 classically Draconis Combine mechs, and it gives you 3 classically Fedcom or Lyran mechs, as it were. So that's my opinion on the Force Pack. I do know that I have taken way longer than I expected, so what I'm actually going to have to do is do the scenario pack separately. I did want to mention that the scenario pack, or not the scenario pack, the Force Pack is due to be out next year, and as far as pricing on it, it looks like it will be $34.99, but if you end up going through our wonderful sponsor, Fortress Miniatures and Games, it looks like they're planning on listing it for $26.24. Right now it has an estimated release date on their website of January 1st of 2025. I'm not exactly sure if that's going to be the case. Now, if you have enjoyed this content and you want to see more of this as it comes out, then please go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Also, if you want to support what I'm doing here, you can either go to the Patreon at patreon.com/unicorn company, or you can go to one of my wonderful sponsors, fortressminiaturesandgames.com, or you can go to the Scrapyard Ork. They make some awesome BattleTech dice. There will be links to both of them and to the Patreon in the description below. And quite frankly, yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing these on the table from other people, seeing what they do with them. And I would love to hear from you what your plans are once this is available, or if you're getting it in your Kickstarter and you plan on painting it up. So that is it for today. I want to thank everyone who's listened. I want to thank my sponsor, my wonderful patrons who help make this possible. And yeah, y'all have a good day or good evening, good whatever it is where you are. This is Carrie signing off. I want to thank my patrons and sponsors, Blind Zen Archer, Boy in a Box, NB Kaiju, Fortress Miniatures and Games, Gus Arkila, Haley Saint, Jamie, Nathan, Richard Johnson, Sarah, Scott, Stephen,
Lead the way, sir. It's a pleasure to fight with you at last.
Omega lead, ejecting. Roger, Control. Omega, this is Control. We should lift off of the next dropship. Orders?
This is Forward 3. The gantries are retracting it.